Shalom, Gabe Greenberg here in New Orleans, Louisiana, learning with you this week, as we do every week, the commentary of the Torah Temimah on the weekly Torah portion. This week is Parshat Vayishlach. We're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 32, verses 25 and 26. Yaakov is anticipating his reunion with his brother, his estranged brother Esav. And Esav, when they last met, was very angry at him. Esav said he wanted to kill him. Yaakov is prepared. He's separated his family, his possessions, but now he remains alone at night, the night before. Vayivater Yaakov levado. Jacob was left alone. Veye avek ish imo ad alot hashachar. And a man or a person or a being wrestled with him, struggled with him until dawn. Verse 26. Vayar ki lo yachol lo. This person, this angel, this emissary saw that he was not going to be able to conquer Yaakov. Vayiga b'kaf yirecho. He hit Yaakov in the hip socket. V'teka kaf yerech Yaakov. He dislocated Yaakov's hip, beheav ko imo, in his struggling with him. The Gemara in Masechet Chulin, Daf Tzadi Aleph, Amud Aleph, 91a, says as follows: Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, says Joshua ben Levi, my dichtiv beheav ko imo. What does the conclusion of that verse mean when it says that the person, the angel, the emissary, hit and dislocated Yaakov's hip in his struggling with him? Isn't that final phrase, in his struggling with him, redundant? We already know that. We already know that they were struggling and wrestling. So, says Yoshua ben Levi, Milamed, it comes to teach us the following: Shehe'elu avak beraglehem ad kisei kavod, that in their wrestling, the dust that was kicked up through their struggling, the dust on the ground raised up to the heavens, up until God's throne. K'tiv hacha behe avko imo. How do we know that? Here it says, in his wrestling with him. Uktiv hatam, elsewhere in prophets, in Nahum chapter 1, it says, ve'anan avak raglav, that at God's feet there is this notion of dust, the same word of avak. So Yoshua ben Levi is sort of drawing on a word association between beheavko, which can mean to struggle with, but also has the same root word as dust. And we see also that by Nahum there's this notion that God, there's dust in the cloud of God. So that association is drawn between the wrestling here, between Yaakov and the person or the angel, and elsewhere that dust is associated with God in this way, and therefore Yoshua ben Levi says that the wrestling led dust to go up to the heavens. Now let's see what Rav Baruch Epstein says in his commentary, the Torah Temimah, on this midrash. Li kasha diuk zeh. This diuk, this inference that Yoshua ben Levi draws, this connection that he draws, is difficult for me. And he is going to have a couple of difficulties, and he'll solve them together. First, he says, Lama lo yisaper hakatuv seder hatakiya hazot. Why does the verse not tell us more about the striking that happens to the hip socket? What happens and the order that it happens in? V'ha bivadai hi me'ora gedola v'nichbada b'cha Yaakov. Clearly, this was a very major event in Yaakov, in Jacob's life. Ad she'asu zecher la lebli lechol le'olam et gida nasha. And how do we know that it's such a big deal? That the Torah tells us, and until today, we don't eat the sciatic nerve because of what happened to Yaakov. V'imkein lama lo yisaper katov me'urazu v'havita bifrat. So I don't understand why the verse doesn't get more into detail about what exactly happened with the striking of the hip, the dislocation, and when it happened. So now he's going to try to understand it all. Nira de Hagamara Medayek. So it seems that the Gemara which contains the midrash infers daha mikodem ktiv vayar ki lo yacholov yigab chaf yerecho v'taka kav yerech Yaakov. So the Torah Temimah is now going to do a close read of these verses. Verse 26 says that the person saw that he was going to be unable to defeat Yaakov. That's the first part of the verse. And then it says he struck Yaakov's hip and dislocated it. Says the Torah Temimah, Hine lefize b'sha shara ki lo yachol lo pasak milhavek ella halach v'naga b'chaf yirecho. So the Torah Temimah says as follows, that when the person, the angel, the being, the emissary, sees, in the first part of the verse, it says that he sees he's not going to be able to conquer Yaakov. According to Torah Temimah, they stop wrestling. No more wrestling. But still the angel or the person reaches out and hits Yaakov's hip. U'benegiato netakakaf, and in so doing dislocates it. V'imkein mivoar sheha'atakatakaf haita achar hahitavkut. So this makes it seem like the hitting of the hip was after the wrestling or the struggling. V'imkein ech ze amar katuv v'takakaf yerech Yaakov behe'avko. But if that's so, then the final part of this verse now seems both unnecessary but also incongruous, because if we've said that they were done wrestling, then why does the verse at the end return to say that the hip was hit in their wrestling? It can't be. We already decided, according to the Torah Temimah's read, that they weren't wrestling anymore. So why is he saying that the hip was injured through wrestling? Ulechein samich al zeh lidrosh ma shedarash. That must be why Rav Yoshua ben Levi felt that that final phrase was available for a midrash, to make a midrash out of it, because it didn't make sense just in the flow of the verse, because it seemed to say that he hit the hip through wrestling, but now we've said that they weren't wrestling at that point. So the fact that the verse concludes by saying that he hit his hip while beheavko imo, wrestling or struggling with him, now must not mean wrestling or struggling. And that's why Rav Yeshua ben Levi says in the Gemara that it doesn't mean wrestling. It means the dust was kicked up and went all the way up to the heavens. Now that he's solved that sort of logistical order problem, the Torah Temimah is now going to say for a second what he thinks that means, this whole drasha means. What does it mean that the dust from their fight went up to the heavens? Ve'inyan hadrash shehalu avak ad kisei kavod. What does this mean that he's kicked up dust to the heavens? Mivoar ba'orech b'chidushei harashba. It's explained at length in the book of the Rashba, the medieval commentator. But he's going to tell us v'tamtzit devarav. Let me just tell you quickly, says the Torah Temimah, what he says over there. This is it. Shezeh shene'evak imo hayasaro shel Esav. First thing you have to understand is who was it who was wrestling Jacob? It was the angel of Esav. Esav's guardian angel, or his sort of heavenly emissary, however we understand that. The avak haraglayim hu kinui letoldot. So when the midrash says that the dust of their feet was kicked up, what does this mean? This is a euphemism or a way of describing their descendants. It wasn't literal dust of their feet that gets kicked up. It's an image of their descendants go up to the heavens. V'ramaz lo hasar hazeh sheyit avko b'neihem. The emissary of Esav was alluding to the fact that the descendants of Esav and the descendants of Yaakov would sadly struggle with one another for generations. Ad hazman sheshmo v'kisao shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu yiyu shleimim. Until the time when the name and the throne of God would be complete, would be one. That is allusions to other places in Tanakh where the notion that that the messianic future redeemed era will happen when God's name and God's throne are one, are whole. So, according to the Torah Temimah, he's citing here the Rashba, who says that the meaning of this drasha, this midrash of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, is that the fighting of Yaakov and Esav would redound through the generations until the future redeemed era when God's throne is one. And that is what is indicated by this notion of the dust of their feet being kicked up to the throne. Dust of their feet indicates their descendants, and the throne is the future, where the world will be perfected and God's name and throne will be one. And all of that midrash is possible, says the Torah Temimah, once you understand that the verse itself, verse Kaf Vav 26, is ordered in a very particular way. First they're fighting, then they stop fighting, but the angel still hits Yaakov's hip socket, and then the conclusion of the verse is which is Beheav Koimo, in their wrestling, is available to be expounded upon to mean not Beheav Ko, not their wrestling, but their dust. Very beautiful read and understanding by the Torah Temimah. I look forward to learning more with you next week. Thank you.